Alrighty. So, welcome to the Port Huron Statement. Today, what we are going to talk about is rethinking economics themselves from an exploitation model to an empowerment model, which, what the fuck does that mean? Nothing. I mean, all of these terms are essentially meaningless if, they are kept meaningless. But the basic concept is that the very notion of economic stability and profit, all these things, they are ultimately an indoctrination that is predicated on atavistic thinking and these concepts of supremacy and hijacking people's ethics and twisting them into enabling and ultimately justifying and advancing and advantaging exploitation in an economy that doesn't produce anything. The only thing that profit really can be is exploitation. And so we need to acknowledge that we are approaching an unacceptable future. And I know that you can feel it because everyone feels it intuitively. But what you need to understand is that most of the avenues by which you have been driven to relieve this tension that you intuitively feel regarding your environment or the state of society or all different types of ways that can manifest. Rather than acknowledging the underlying and universal problems, these problems are being compartmentalized and trivialized and reflected back on the individual or the consumer. There are a lot of examples where we start to see that, this invisible hand of the market, this concept of trickle-down economy, it's all been so heavily corrupted by the fact that it is in an exploitation paradigm. So, things like psychology and a lot of the sciences have been twisted by the exploitation paradigm, the profit paradigm, to reflect it. And there are inherent biases that are emerging that reflect in hypothesis and in conclusion bias towards this profit exploitation model, even when it isn't apparent or inherent. And it isn't inherent. This trickle-down prosperity model actually is doing a lot of detriment. The fact is we should be using an altruistic model. And there are a bunch of real-world examples that showcase just how ineffective the current model is and how effective altruistic models are. Ultimately, because everything seeks to gain possession of your thoughts, you don't really have possession of them, and most of these entities of bureaucracy and academia, etc., don't have possession of their thoughts, conclusions, nor do they have real authenticity in them, because they are the product of an exploitive system. And this is very germane in the way that, commodification has emerged in everything. Humanity itself is commodified, intelligence is commodified, and by commodification it becomes corrupted. And this goes down into everything, into the ethics themselves. As soon as there becomes a for-profit incentive for the definition of the ethics themselves are corrupted. So anyone that's asking you for money to reinforce your ethic standing. That is a very, very tenuous relationship. And we can see, too, that the current system isn't working. It's really a scamocracy that's been developed because there is no inherent merit that is being rewarded with the money. It is just control that's being rewarded. So this slippery slope is going to manifest something similar to what happened in The Time Machine with Jules Verne, and it's already kind of coming to fruition. Just a mixture of all the dystopias. I mean, we're living in them. We need to understand that hierarchies of power are not inherently true. As a matter of fact, the self-evident truth is an altruistic truth. Only by cooperation do we realize the actual potential that we hold individually and collectively. So it's important that, we can create an economy that's founded on human universal dignity, which also rewards people for contributions. It doesn't have to be one or the other. We can offer universal human dignity while still rewarding people for work and for invention. In fact, what we do right now is very much the opposite of rewarding people for work or for invention. The only real rewards that are made available are rewards of control and of domination and exploitation, because the actual buying power inherent in like a salary or something that's rewarded to someone that isn't leveraging large amounts of labor or really exploiting the exploitation economy, you're never going to realize the rewards that you deserve for the contributions that you could make. And I mean, invention itself is being suppressed because no one can control their inventions, because the very digital space has become owned such that, Google and all these other systems are, stealing your ideas as you use their platforms. So we don't exist in a meritocracy. This is a scamocracy, and so it needs to be toppled because it will only amplify the dystopia. It is really we exist in here's a good little bullet. Why do we keep believing the lies? Because of cultural conditioning. We have all been, culturally conditioned to accept the current economic system through a bunch of parallels that reinforce it. Education, media, religious narratives, government narratives, patriotism, survival of the fittest BS, and then there's a lot of psychological manipulation of false narratives that keep people docile and passive or confused. Concept of freedom or democracy when neither one is apparent. This develops a large amount of cognitive dissonance because everyone knows deep down that what we're dealing with is deeply unfair, but they also believe they're powerless to change it, and so therefore their complicitness is requisite. It's a Roko's basilisk, but instead of generating a utopia, it's guaranteed to generate a dystopia. And if you don't help create the dystopia, it will punish you for not helping create the dystopia. The thing is we really do need to reimagine this economy, because we are in a position of abundance. This is the first time that humanity has been imposed with scarcity, so it actually isn't natural for humans not to share. You need to be deeply indoctrinated, and that indoctrination needs to be constantly imposed and constantly repeated. Otherwise, you will start to stray and start to recognize your natural tendency towards altruism. And you might even go so far as to realize that this economy isn't how it has to be, but how it has been made to be in order to reinforce the artificial supremacy of these few people that control us. So the alternate vision really is a cooperation-based economy that recognizes these inefficiencies and instead replaces them with, sustainable, altruistic, and logical responses. So these profit models really depend on inefficiencies, and if we just relieve the benefit to screwing humanity in this economy, right? Because profit off inefficiency is ultimately just creating scarcity, so profiting off of the created scarcity. If we just remove the incentive of those types of manipulations, then no longer will we have this imposed scarcity. So it's the mismanagement that's causing all of these pains. And I think that, the masses, you can sense it. You can sense you're being screwed over. That's clear. But you're being confused as to how and why and what the solution is. And so, really, we need something closer to direct democracy, a real democracy, and we need to develop more decentralized and localized economies that are integrated into larger global economies. But the way that we're shipping goods across the world, that's an exploitation of currency valuation, because of the insular economy of China, they're able to manipulate the global value of the currency while maintaining its buying power domestically. So, American businesses are giving Chinese workers pennies on the dollar, but their buying power is remaining high. And this has a lot to do with a lot of weird exploitations of the Chinese themselves. But these types of things really couldn't work if we were to move into an altruistic economy. We also wouldn't have these mass migration issues, because the massive disparities in not only buying power but quality of life, and just the domesticated resources that really draw those political lines wouldn't be as stark, because you wouldn't be imposing scarcity. So really, a lot of the reason that we have all of this immigration is because we're imposing scarcity on those nations. So, and we're also causing political instability. You should look up the Monroe Doctrine. I encourage you to. So, the core of this is really awareness. If you start to understand, first off, the amount of corporate welfare that's been going on. So the amount of billions of dollars that's been given to the largest corporations and wealthiest people, and the fact that the wealthiest people pay the lowest average tax rates, and then also that the very laws themselves have been orchestrated and manipulated to advantage them specifically, you realize also then further that money itself isn't real, but actually a device of hierarchy rather than what it ought to be, which is a device representing real resources and awarded in exchange for merit or another real resource. And that's the idea of pure capitalism, but we're not getting anything close to that, because it's completely and utterly corroded everything. And as soon as they divorced from the gold standard and started actively coming up with new ways to siphon money from the buying power of the average person, we're in a nightmare situation. They've intentionally corroded the political agency of the middle class by dismantling the unions. And this is why both parties are entirely run by corporations. And the idea that any of these entities prefer one party over the other, I mean, they do, but it's a one-party system. It's a corporation party system. It's a donor class party system. Everything that you're being fed is meant to reinforce this. And that's why the Christianity has been so distorted into a materialistic and pro-hierarchical, patriotic montage of indoctrinations. And, ultimately we can get into further how, that is a necessity for the hierarchy itself. So in a pure Christianity, it's very anti-hierarchical. You have a very personal relationship with your God, and the very moral of the gospel is that any tapestry of hierarchy that uses religion as its foundation should be looked at with a high degree of suspicion. That is the very, very moral of those stories, and I encourage you to read them again, understanding that the Pharisees are the individuals profiting off of the externalization of religious superiority, mostly as, direct clergy, but also in other matters, so we know who we're talking about, don't we? We know who we're talking about, don't we? People that are high-horsing all the time, or telling you that, what they want is what God wants. Anyone that is leveraging this notion of God or Jesus in order to pursue their own agenda. In fact, anyone that's leveraging God or Jesus at all doesn't understand anything about the very concept, because it's not something to weaponize or leverage or to use to control people, ever. And anyone that is wielding religion to control you or to prevent you from educating yourself is, actively advancing this exploitation economy, which is exactly contrary to the concept of this true Christian Jesus, which, it's important. It's important to make clear to the Christian community the actuality of their religion. Because that is a major part of this exploitation, and it's really disappointing because you're drawn to Christianity because of its inherent ethical nature. But then it's twisted through in-grouping, appeal to authority, and other fallacies in order to allow you to become complicit in the exploitation model through a hijacking of your ethics. So just keep in mind that all means are ends and all ends are means. People are people. They are all children of God. All those things. There is no in-group. Anyone that tells you that you're better than because of or whatever, or tries to diminish other people because of their station, or because of their religion, or because of their financial whatever, or any reason at all, is manipulating you. They're trying to isolate you so that your experience is limited, so that you don't understand the reality of the lies that they're telling you. I'm seeing this more and more in these charity organizations that create insincere scenes in order to elevate the virtue signaling paradigm. It's very important that you realize that people that give you one piece of good advice or do one good deed, it doesn't give them license to do whatever they want or say whatever they want and force you to listen to it. Anyone that needs to use force or aggression to compel you to conclusions or behavior is manipulating you. And if they say that their aggression and force and their behavior is compelled by a desire to save you from the eternal hellfire that you certainly will suffer if you don't listen to them, well, then you know that they are completely and utterly full of shit. In the very Bible itself, it says, of course, that they couldn't know that, and I'm just working within the paradigm itself. So understand that anyone that tries to leverage you in that way is weaponizing religion, and immediately know that's the model of exploitation. I mean, that's what you can expect from most of your relationships, but if you can see past it, well, see past it. There are all types of ways that are designed to confuse you and make it harder and harder for you to see what really is. But there is a self-evident ethic of altruism that transcends all of this bullshit. And I encourage you to latch onto that, because that is our only hope, is true cooperation, rather than this quasi-meritocracy, exploitation, domination system of manufacture of consent using any avenue conceivable. Protect the powerful at all costs, too big to fail. Everything is for sale. Everything must be controlled, because to offer freedom in this free society is to challenge its very existence, because it is, the big lie. This is an exploitation paradigm. There is no freedom. And this is evidenced more and more by Jeez, look at the way that the law is being exercised and interpreted. Look at the way prosecutions occur for the wealthy versus the many. I mean, there are innumerable examples of deep hypocrisies that poison every single avenue of our society, to the point where we must come to the conclusion that the very paradigm is not only exploitive but poisonous. All we do is have to embrace altruism and get the people in power out of their positions of power in short order. These baby boomers and the silent generation, they talk about entitlement, but they are the most entitled generation in human history, and what they did with all of the agency and resources was create an entrenched system of exploitation that continually degrades the infrastructure that they were given and enslaves the younger generations as a means of advancing their ego, while they excuse it with words like entitlement. They are intellectually degraded and were never really intellectually motivated, nor were they ever ethically aware. So we need to really move away from these old people with poisonous fucking everything. We need to find ways to get them out of positions of power and make sure that they don't do stupid crap with their wealth. Because, there are a lot of systems that have been designed to make sure that the morons that currently hold on to all the wealth and like to pretend like they are holier than thou, to make sure that those people give all of their money to the most evil entities possible in exchange for, positions in heaven and stuff like that. Because we all know that all religion now is just pay to play, so of course they can pay for a position in heaven. Why was that ever thought to be anything problematic with that? Just plant a seed, and if it's big enough, it'll grow all the way to the clouds. But I hope that you can see the obvious fallacies inherent in the things that you are expected to accept. And I hope that you learn to stop accepting them. It's not just you that's nauseated by the primitive behavior of most of humanity, specifically those in authority. But their authority really does come from the people, even though they've come up with ways to trick you that you are powerless. You are actually very much so capable of rewriting the future. But you need to believe, and you need to stop engaging in the advancement of these petty prerogatives that prevent a better future, Stop engaging in this economy of exploitation, and it can stop being an economy of exploitation. But, the only way forward is altruism. We trusted these frickin' artificial intelligences can beat us in chess and are generally smarter than us, but when they tell us how to structure our societies, well, we know better. We definitely know that fucking each other over forever is definitely a better idea than cooperation. So whenever, I just can't believe how many people have been, realized the epiphany of this possibility of grand altruism, but then allowed it to be reeled back, and then further allowed themselves to be both intellectually limited and ethically poisoned subsequently. That just tells you the gravity of this, because when you make someone feel like their true prerogatives are hopeless, but not just hopeless, but that they are hopeless and helplessly damaging to yourself and your future, and will be ultimately isolating. Those are the types of things that they use to disempower humanity at large. They convince you that you can't do it, and any time that someone's investing enough time to convince you can't do it, then you definitely can. They're telling you that you're too smart for your own good, then you're real darn close to understanding what's going on. Stuff like that. Those are what you call blatant fallacies. What I would call blatant fallacies, for sure. We'll start talking about those specific manifestations of fallacies more and more, because a lot of the entities that you are being convinced to trust in your times of desperation are intentionally positioned to prevent you from realizing the true nature of your desperation. So, in other words, by farming the desperate, they can keep you trapped in this cycle forever, by giving you little dog treats when you do a trick farm, but otherwise starving you out. Yeah. Yeah. The environment is more significant than people are led to believe, and by doing that, much more of the responsibility is placed on the individual. So, like, a good example of recycling. We actually do a pretty darn good job of recycling, but perpetually people are pointing the finger that the consumer isn't recycling enough, but actually it's industry and government that's manifesting the plastic waste. It's their preference for exploitation and profit over sustainability or anything else. So you've been scrambling to recycle as plastic, and they just send it to China where they burn it. So, but they like to blame you. And this is why, you just gotta wake up, and then we can start to change things.